All right, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at installing the firewall and begin putting the foot box in. Before we sent the firewall off the putter coat, decided that we were going to extend the firewall forward about 2 inches. That gives us more room behind the dashboard to do the wiring and everything else that needs to go back there. Now there's some really good kits you can buy to do that. We just decided to fabricate ours on our own. Basically what we did was we just took a piece of aluminum, and this distance here is about 2 inches, and we riveted it to the back of the firewall, and then we made brackets on each side that would hook to the rest of the foot box components, so the firewall will be sealed just like it's supposed to be. Instead of riveting it to the front, if you follow me over here, instead of riveting it to the front of this main cross beam, we'll be actually riveting it to the top of the cross beam. As you can see here, where we've got the rivet holes already drilled, ready to go. So that's what we're going to start with. We're going to lay out our lines of silicone, and then we're going to go ahead and rivet it in place. Pretty simple. You can see I'm trying not to put a whole lot of silicone on it. It doesn't take much. All you're trying to do is make it so it's going to dampen vibration and give a slightly better, we'll call it a seal, where the aluminum is riveted down on top of the other surface. All right, it helps to have two hands when you do this because you want to Cleco it in place first, but you don't want to move it around a whole lot because you'll smear all that silicone and make a mess.
Hang on. There we go.
There we go. There we go. Gotcha.
All right, I'm right on the money here.
Beautiful. I don't like having all the silicone oozing out, so when I'm done, I take a little acetone and wipe up the exterior so it looks nice and pretty. Okay, there it is, all installed. Looking pretty good. We ran a small bead of silicone over in the corner there to seal up that hole, and the rest of it will come together as the foot box is assembled in front of it. Once Gary gets all of the silicone in place, we'll go ahead and slip it on there, and we will Cleco it and rivet it in place. Gary, point to that one vertical tube down at the bottom that we were talking about a minute ago, the one we're not going to take. Okay, that vertical tube right there, you do not install the rivets or put the silicone in that location at this time. That's done later because when you put the rest of the foot box together, there's another panel that has to slide in there. There we go. All right. It seems like a waste of time to put a bunch of Clecos in just to pull them back out again. But my experience has been the more Clecos you use, the less likely you are to have holes shift or have the metal warp or kind of bend as you put it back together. So it gets everything to lay nice and flat when you go to put the rivets in. We're actually only riveting that top portion. If you see that single Cleco sitting there in the middle, there's about 5 holes circling around that Cleco. Those are the only ones you install at this time. Okay, installing the pedals into the pedal blocks. You can set them up to where they offset left or right. A guy at the schoolhouse had one where they were offset to the left, and then the throttle in the normal position, and my big fat feet really like that setup, so that's what I'm going to start with. You can always come back later and reposition those. Just using a T20 Torx bit, and you just snug them up. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the pedal switch mount. Slide it in position above the brake pedal, go ahead and put a mark on it, and then you drill a 3/16 hole. Mounting tab installs with a single screw and a lock nut. Okay, next thing we're going to do is go ahead and install the switch. First thing you do is you go ahead and put the first part of the jam nut on there, and then slide it in place here. And if you'll notice, I have the plugs oriented towards the center of the brake box assembly. Then you put another one on the bottom here, and you'll move these two nuts up and down to adjust the switch to get your brake lights to come on at the appropriate time. Nothing cosmic. For now, I'm just going to go a little bit past finger tight on these and call it good. You can add a second one on the clutch side that'll act as your clutch safety switch, so you can't accidentally start the car without the clutch engaged. We're going to go ahead and do that. It goes together the same way as this one does, so I won't waste your time by filming it again. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to hook the mounting bracket to the underside of the pedal box. The easiest way to do that is lift it up so the pedals rotate forward. You notice the nuts are on the top. You use your 1-inch buttons that come with the kit. There's 4 of them. Line them up, bolt it together. All right, there it is, the complete install. When you're looking for this part, remember, I've already had this powder coated. It's actually bare metal when you get it, so you'll be looking for a silver piece. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install the rear mount just temporarily. I noticed when I went to install it that the clutch safety switch interferes with it just a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and just twist it out of the way. And then we'll deal with it later, make sure that we can plug it in and all that. We might have to turn it all the way 90 degrees out, but for now that's going to work. We're just going to put these on temporarily, and then we're ready to bring it over to the car. Okay, next thing we're going to do is go ahead and install the foot box. We're going to take 2 bolts and go ahead and temporarily lash it down, because we've got to mark 2 holes over here. We want to make sure it's tight. That way we get an accurate indication of where that bad boy needs to go. All right, good solid metal on metal contact. Grab our trusty Sharpie and mark a hole here. And how do we get in there? Down through here. Now we're going to pull this off. We're going to do 2 1/4-inch holes through here and come back and mount everything permanently. Got our holes drilled. Now we're going to reinstall it. And then we're going to install the hardware. But according to the book, we're just going to put it hand tight. Here's a good clear image of the foot box installed. In this case, we've already got the master cylinders and the throttle installed. We'll circle around and show you how we did that in just a minute here. Moving on to the master cylinders. The kit comes with wheelwood master cylinders, and from looking at the forums and stuff, a lot of people say they're good for around 10,000 miles, about 2 years, and then they start leaking and carrying on and making a mess. So what everyone recommends is to go to the Tilton 76 series. These are available on Amazon. They're not very expensive. I'll have a link at the top of the screen here. It'll pop up just in a second where you can go and order these. They're a little bit different than the wheelwoods. The wheelwoods come with this little kit here where you have to put the little plastic cap on the top. This is where the fluid will run from your reservoir into the master cylinder. And then on the back side, the outlet is actually pointed backwards and it needs to be on a 90. So you've got a little attachment in the bag here that you'd screw into the back to set yourself up so you've got that 90 and you can work your way around to where you need to go with it. On the Tiltons, the port is on the top. So you can either go with a straight or you can still put a 90 on it and fish it around to where it needs to go. And then this port here requires you to get an NPT fitting with a barb on it, and that'll hook to the same rubber hoses that you use with your wheelwoods to run it over to wherever you mount your reservoir to bring the fluid into the master cylinder. The other thing you have to do, regardless of whether you use the Tiltons or the wheelwoods, is the book recommends you cut off 5/8 of an inch from the top of the stud here. The schoolhouse recommends to start with a 1/4, and then if you need more later, you can always take more off, but you can't put more back on, right? So we've trimmed these down to 1/4 inch. The way you do that is you go ahead and you screw the lock nut on over the end of it, and then we'll mark our 1/4 inch, we'll cut it off, and then I've got a little deburring tool, we'll deburr the end of it, and then you use the nut to kind of come up to the end and ride it back and forth a little to clean those threads up, and that's all there is to it. Pretty simple. We've measured 1/4 inch, and now we're going to lop 1/4 inch off the top of this. Then I'm going to put a deburring tool on the end of it to clean up the threads. Cool. Then we're going to use the nut to clean up what's left. Clean as a whistle. Look at that. Okay, the next thing you need to do is we go ahead and we screw in the shaft on the master cylinder into the connector here in the pedal box. What I found though is that these are anodized, and when you go to screw it in, of course these threads won't be perfect. If you try to screw it in with your fingers, it's just too slick to get it in. So what we did was went ahead and double nutted it. We went in and installed it. We screwed it in using a wrench, and it didn't take much. It's just a little bit more than my fingers could handle when it was slippery. And we ran it all the way through, put some WD-40, ran it back out, and now I can do it by hand. So what I'm going to do after we've done all this is I'm going to pull this back out. I'm going to remove the extra jam nut, and I should be able to get it in there. Okay, so here we go for real. If you can hold the back of that for me, Gary. I know I'm blocking this with my hand, but so you're going to screw this in until this shaft just starts to come out to be visible on this side, according to the book. And then you can go ahead and set this up and bolt these in place. Once I got everything installed, I started messing around with pedal location. And by the time I got everything set up, I had the shaft slid in pretty far, as you can see in this picture here. And that's when I realized I needed to go with the 5/8 cutoff versus the 1/4 inch I initially started with. The last thing you do is you put on the support that goes on the top, little silver piece with 4 bolts. Screw them in, easy day. Okay, for the throttle assembly, we decided to go with the Breeze. It fits in there real well, like the way it's set up. When you get it, you have to swap up the top bracket. Comes with this one installed. It's a simple switch. You just pull this out and adjust it so that this can move. Put a little Loctite, you're good to go. Pretty simple. For the throttle cable, we went with the low car cable. It's a lot more stout than the one that comes with the kit. To install that, first you have to loosen up the end that hooks to the carburetor and pull it off so you can pull the cable all the way through. And now you can take this nut off and line it up through your firewall to set yourself up to hook it to the throttle. Okay, I'm going to pop off this little C-clamp right here. Try not to launch it across the garage. And then this just hooks right to here. Let's see if we can get this C-clamp back in here without causing a calamity. And there you go. Okay, now I'm going to run the cable through the pedal box. Goes right there. Then we put the lock nut on the back side, and it tightens up with a 15mm wrench. Okay, the way this throttle pedal hooks up is on the diagonal bar inside the car. This just slides on, and then when you get it positioned where you want it, which really we're not going to be able to really get until after we get the motor installed, but then you just tighten these two little set screws, get your throttle position you want it, tighten the set screws, and that's all there is to it. So really right now this is kind of a tentative installation. When I get ready to button it up for good, I'm going to tighten these up to mark the paint on the bottom of the railing, and then I'm going to go into the drill and just dimple the steel where these little marks go, and that's going to help lock it in a lot more securely. So this is real simple. We just set this in place, and I'll get you some photos from the other side in just a minute. But we're just going to slide this through. If you put the mounting points, if you put the set screws on the top, your pedal is going to be in the wrong position. The set screws need to be lined up on the bottom for the pedal to be set up correctly so that you get a straight feed on the cable. All right, so you can see right there, if I pull this tight, that lines up pretty much straight ahead. And we'll move this back and forth to adjust the pedal on a final installation once I get the engine installed and get it hooked up to the carburetor so I know where everything's going to sit. But for now, I'm just going to snug this up here, and then that'll be it. Okay, once we've got the pedal secure in the tentative position we want it in, I can go ahead and put the ends of the cable back together so I don't lose the pieces parts. Of course, once we get the engine installed, we'll adjust all this and get all the lengths and all the other things correct. Cable slides in there. There's a little jam nut with an Allen head that holds all the magic together. I'm more than likely going to go with a little blue Loctite when I put this together for real, but I'm just going to snug it up a little bit for now. And that's it. Throttle quadrant is installed. Ready for the next step. Moving on to the steering rack now, the first thing you have to do is get these bushings out so that we can put in the Factory 5 bushings and it fits in the chassis. The way we did it was we took a smaller, it's got a metal bushing on the inside. We took a smaller ratchet head, put it in there, and beat it out with a hammer, and it was quite a chore. We put it in a vise so the vise would kind of sit on the edges here, and then just pounded it out. But there was a lot of swearing, so we edited that part out. But just beat it out, and then these are set aside. And then the next thing you do, you're going to take the Factory 5 pieces, and they're going to go in here like this. Now, these are a little tight, so I'm going to give them a little love with a hammer, see if that helps. And I'm avoiding having the steering lines being underneath anything when I give this a whack here. All right. Okay, installing the rack. Definitely easier with a second set of hands. Basically what we did here is you kind of slide it over to the left towards the passenger side, and then you can get the edge of the driver's side into the slot. And then you just kind of start wiggling it around, and we used a punch there to kind of line up the holes, and then the bolts went right in. We did have to open up the attachment point just a little bit on the driver's side. It was just a little bit tight. But once we did that, it went together fairly easy. If you notice, there's one thing we're missing. I'll show you a picture of it in a minute here, and that's the safety strap that goes on the passenger side. So we just put the bolts in loose, and we'll tighten those up once we get the safety strap from Factory 5. Before I could put tie rods on the end of the steering rack, I had to trim off 3/4 of an inch. In hindsight, an inch would have probably been a little bit better, but you can see here I marked my 3/4 of an inch, and then here on the other side you can see what it looks like when it was all complete and ready to go. Well, we got everything installed, ready to put our tie rod into our steering arm, and I figured out I put it in wrong. I did it wrong. So what I did was, the steering arm is beveled on the inside to accept the bevel from the tie rod, and I have it upside down. The bad part is, if I flip it over right where it is right now, it's curving the wrong way. It's curving away from the rotor. So I have to flip these over and switch them, which means I have to take all of this apart. Okay, so we put the tie rods on the end of our rack and we measured it out from center to center, 53 and 1/16 inches. And now we're ready to slip the tie rod into the steering arm. And we'll bolt it up. And if you have the castellated nut, you tighten it down to 25 foot-pounds and install the cotter key. And you're all set. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the 1-inch D-tube and the upper U-joint. And first we're going to remove the set screws from the U-joint. You notice on this particular U-joint there's 2 set screws, and it's a lot beefier than the one that came from Factory 5. It's not because I have anything bad to say about the one that comes from Factory 5. It's because I don't know what I did with it. I had it in the inventory, it's now gone, so I got this one aftermarket. It's real beefy, looks nice. I'll have a link for it at the top of the screen for you. So basically what you're going to do is you're just going to slide the U-joint over the top of the bar and set it in there. And then you want to mark the holes where it's contacting the D-shaped bar. Now we're going to take a drill and we're just going to dimple these locations to give these set screws a purchase on this piece of material. Okay, same thing again. We're going to go ahead and loosen up these jam nuts, and we're going to go with the 3/4 tube, slip it in here, and we want to look till it just starts to come out here. You can see it there coming through. We'll set it up so it's just flush with that opening, and then we'll go ahead and tighten these jam nuts up to hold it in place. First the jam nuts, and then the locking nuts on the outside. All right, now we bring this over the car, and we're going to go ahead and hook it up. Okay, lower U-joint. Go ahead and loosen up the set screw all the way so you can slide this on. It's supposed to be a tight fit, so it says you may need a hammer to get it to go on there. And once you get it on there, go ahead and tighten your set screw. You want that set screw in this groove right here, so you want to try to line that up as best you can. And you can feel it by rocking it back and forth where it'll drop in there. Tighten that down. There we go. All right, lower half. We're going to loosen it up to accept the 3/4 D shaft. And same thing, we want it to protrude just to the base, just like we did on the other one up there, and then we go ahead and set our set screws. Okay, we're going to take the side of the D-tube that we've put the divots in, and we're going to go ahead and slide that through the bearing. And once we get it through, we're going to line it up with our universal joint so that the little divots that we put in it earlier are able to accept the steering shaft. And then carefully put your set screws in and make sure that you pick up those divots that you created as you slide these in. So just get it kind of snug. And then you'll feel it drop in there. Yeah, once you get it to where it's hooked, and then that's the position you're going to tighten it in. So now I'm going to slide the upper portion of the steering shaft into the 1-inch D-bar down below and just get it started in there. And what I'm looking for is clearance right here and make sure that it's not contacting this metal crossbar. And I've got about, looks like a good 1/4 inch there, so I think I'm okay. In the event that this is touching or closer than you feel comfortable, you can always go ahead and put washers underneath here to lift the pillow block up and give you better clearance. All right, once you have it in there, go ahead and rotate your steering shaft so that the 2 round recesses are visible on the top. You're going to lay your 2 spring washers in each one of those little recesses, and then use your thumb to kind of press it down as you slide it in there. Keep sliding it in until the second spring washer just disappears inside the 1-inch double D tube. Okay, once you get that spring washer slid all the way in, start up at your pillow block here, tighten down your pillow block and the 2 Allen heads that are on the front side of it, and then just work your way down through the whole system. And that'll do it for your steering system. It is now complete. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe and look for us next time.